So yeah, good to see you all. Should be live now on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And yeah, it's really good to be back and to talk to you again about language learning and about different things that I come across throughout the week. And a thing that came across sort of my social media pages was about apps and what I think about applications for learning languages. And of course, it's a conversation that I think a few people have had many times before. And I think it's an important one to have because I think there are a couple of things that stick out to me. So first thing is application use and learning, is it a generational thing? Is it something that, for example, Generation Z, millennials, use more because it's more in line with kind of what they're used to? They grew up or are growing up with these kinds of technologies. Is it something that, for example, for me, who I hesitate to say which generation I am, but yeah, I mean, for me, they weren't a normal part of my education growing up. So, of course, when it comes to looking at different tools to use languages, my very first instinct is to go straight to a book and to look at that. However, I'm not a completely illiterate person when it comes to IT either. I have worked in the IT sector in the past, and also I work in social media, so I am aware of how things work, and I do use social media, as you can plainly see. So I would hope that I'm not a complete noob, as people would call me potentially. But I have been asked many times to look at different applications and to test them out and to give my thoughts and my feedback. Some people who have come to me in the past to ask for this kind of feedback have taken it on board very well, and possibly made adjustments as well based on what I said. Others possibly not. I can't remember which is which, so I'm not sort of avoiding naming and shaming, because I honestly can't remember which were which nowadays. I just remember that some people were just hoping for me to say, wow, this is amazing, and it wasn't really my thought. I just had a list of things that I would do differently, and I gave that feedback. And of course, even today, I mean, I get people write to me and ask me about feedback for things that they've produced and stuff like that. And naturally, I'm always happy to look at new things. It's always a nice thing to do, to see what kind of new tools are available. Now, there are some very popular applications online, and of course, I think most of you are aware of the very popular ones. And the thing I'd say about popular applications generally is not that they're particularly bad or particularly good, but I would say what they do is they do what a popular application does. It popularizes, I'll get my words out. It popularizes the dearie me, I don't know what's happening today, I can't even speak English, but it popularizes language learning for an entire generation potentially, or for new audiences, because some of them have huge funding for marketing materials and so get the word out, and the promises they make may not be 100% true, but what they do is they get people intrigued and interested in language learning. And what's cool nowadays is that there are a number of places where people meet and talk and get together and break bread, and they get into groups and start communities, and even get into our own language learning community that we have, and I like that. And so for that reason, I think that anything we do in terms of getting the word out of how to learn languages and to encourage more people to learn is good. So I just want that as a baseline for where I'm starting from here. And I'm not going to trash anyone or any particular thing, because I think that the biggest and most important thing is they're all pulling in the same direction, and that is to encourage people to learn languages, right? Now, in terms of what works for me, I have seen things on some of the more popular apps that have worked to a degree. Sometimes I find a few of them a little bit vague, I guess, or difficult to manage. But there are 3 apps that I particularly use myself. Those apps are, and many of you will know this will be a surprise, LingQ is one of them. LingQ, in terms of how its usability, whenever I show it to somebody, they do not immediately get how LingQ works. And I've been working with someone recently, actually, on language learning and their path and how they can learn better. And I showed them a number of these applications to supplement the learning. And this is what I think. I got a number of comments when I asked people. I asked you all on Instagram, what do you think about language apps? And a number of you did say, to supplement what we're doing. It's not in of its own right. Apps don't tend to be something we just use to learn a language on their own. We do need to have other things. And I think pretty much I would agree with a lot of that thought there. I think that it's true that, yeah, it's good to have a mix of things going on to be able to learn a language. Now, what I found with LingQ was whenever I shared it with people, and people who have mentioned it whenever I've mentioned how much I like LingQ, they've come back with feedback saying, but I don't get it, I can't find the things I need, this doesn't work very well, or that doesn't work very well. I think generally it is a case of the premium LingQ, for example, that I bought. I am able to add in text and audio that I use for my own studies, and I find that quite handy to be able to do that, to go through it and to sort of listen to and read along at the same time. And instead of looking up on different devices, I can just click on the word in LingQ and remind myself of the meaning of a singular word if I think I should know it. That kind of thing's quite cool. The other thing that I like is that it has a number of stories, and it's definitely something that you can take from sort of the beginnerish stage right the way through to read even books on it, and that's quite handy. So what I found is when I've described to people how to get the most out of it in terms of putting in your study materials, putting in the audio and the materials you have, and using it in addition to what else you've got, then people do seem to get it and see the benefit more. So I hope that me telling you that has been useful. That's what I find most useful about LingQ is being able to put my own stuff in there and review it. But also I've enjoyed looking at some of the stories as well, obviously, and some of the stuff that's already been put in there, because there's quite a lot of material in LingQ. The downside is that you can't just add a random new language that you want to learn. So still you have to stick to the languages that are already in LingQ, and I'm not necessarily learning all of those, but I might be learning another one. And getting them added isn't something that's particularly easy for the average user to do. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to be able to get things up and running. And I think it depends a lot on the LingQ team. The other applications that I think are particularly useful for me, I've been using Clozemaster quite a lot recently, and Clozemaster's got a number of languages, particularly languages that you don't often find materials for. So languages like Maori, languages like Cornish, languages like Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic. These are languages where a lot of apps don't really have materials for them. I mean, Scottish Gaelic clearly, obviously, on Duolingo is there, but if I think about sort of extra materials, and I don't want to talk about owls constantly, or sort of whether or not, I prefer the blue cow over the purple elephant or something random. I prefer sentences that sort of make sense. There are disadvantages as well with Clozemaster in that some of these languages, like Scottish Gaelic, there is no voice for it, so I can't hear. And with a language like that, particularly in the beginning, it is beneficial to hear how it's pronounced, because it takes a while to get into how you read it and to read it well. I've been finding that for months now, and I'm still not 100%, and I'll still make mistakes when I'm trying to read things out, and I think it should be this way, and it's not quite. Although my teacher assures me that it's very regular and very normal the way you read and write it, I'm still not quite there. The same thing with Cornish is true. They don't have the pronunciation, but with Cornish you don't need the pronunciation. Cornish pronunciation is pretty simple. Pretty much it's similar to Welsh in that you write it as you say it for the most part, and it's not really particularly difficult. You don't really need it. Once you can, the basic things about Cornish, you can read it. Maori is a similar thing. You don't really need somebody to read out Maori to you. You can read it yourself, and as long as you've learned the basics of the pronunciation of Maori, you don't really need somebody reading it out. But for other bigger languages that are more often learned, like Turkish, where there are more materials available usually than lesser studied languages like Maori or Cornish on a world level, there is an audio available for many of these languages, and so you can hear as well as read. And I find that useful, Clozemaster, because sometimes it's a little bit random, the sentences, but the sentences, particularly for Cornish, I can say make a lot of sense to be able to really get the grammar and the basic vocabulary in my head. I found that a lot of the stuff that's already been put in there is really, really useful for me personally as a learner of the language. And not all of the materials that's already there is the same quality, and a few of the other ones I've looked through, like with Albanian, for example, there are a couple of things where they're missing the umlauts over the e's, which make a difference in pronunciation for Albanian. If you speak Albanian already, it's not so bad, but if you don't speak Albanian, you're going to find learning it from zero on Clozemaster a bit of a challenge, because there's no audio again. But again, there are not many places where you can use these languages that I'm talking about right now on other applications. And this is a big draw for me. Though I think that generally it's another app that I suggested to the person I'm actually going through this sort of study program with, and we meet twice a week, and I talk through how to learn languages and what to do, and I set goals and things like that with this person, and we meet regularly, and it's been going on now for the last maybe couple of months, and there's a huge difference now in where they've come from sort of where we started and where we are now, and it's simply because some of these apps and some of the other things that I set are just a nice combination. And the feedback I got on Clozemaster as well was really enjoy doing it. Simple to me to do. Can just do it on the fly. Can do like maybe just 10 questions and knock them out, and just have a little bit of extra time with the language. And they're doing it for German, so I found it useful. The third app that I've been using as well is Speakly, and Speakly is an app that will actually teach you the language. I mean, you do a placement test, so kind of like Duolingo in the sense that you can do a placement test, or you can start from zero. But on Speakly, the difference is that the languages are slightly different. You've got languages like Estonian and Finnish and Russian and French, Spanish, German, Italian, I think, and obviously English, I think, too. And the thing that's cool about Speakly that is, I feel a lot better than say Duolingo, for example, is that the sentences make sense and it feels very intuitive. So they are sentences that you are likely to use. They are things that you are not going to just laugh at and post on social media, which is a very good marketing technique, don't get me wrong, but then they're not just things that you're going to post on social media to say, look what Duolingo taught me today, isn't this crazy? They are very sort of phrases that you can then plug and play and move into other contexts, and you can start seeing how they move things out and put them into other places. And this is something I like about it, and I've been playing around with it for Estonian, just to kind of see how it works. And and it does make sense. As far as I'm aware, it was set up by teachers of language teachers who really sort of get what people need to be able to do to be able to communicate, and what they teach you, and they sort of, as I say, they go through sort of the kinds of vocabulary that you're going to come across very often, and they really and they really, it really makes sense. I'm just laughing. Sorry, somebody wrote, "Vamos fazer a duo chorar." We're going to make duo cry. Oh dear, that one. I'm laughing at that because I think it's so funny. I always find it ridiculous when duo cries. Sorry, I don't like it. I think it's silly, but it's a marketing technique that just does not work for me at all. I find it annoying and frustrating if I get horrible emails from applications telling me that they're missing me, or that I'm making them cry, or making them upset, or I'm doing something else to them. And I just think that is just something I really don't need in my life. And it makes me really turn off the application completely. So I've not even opened Duolingo, I think, for over a year and a half now. It started annoying me completely with the owl crying. I just thought that was the pits. But anyway, with with Speakly, though, I find it really, really useful how they sort of introduce vocabulary and grammar that you can plug and play and use in many, many different contexts. And that is, for me, the key thing where I think more more languages could be added as we move forward. At the moment, I think they're gonna probably add more in the future, I guess. But it's cool that you've got things like, Estonian. I mean, I don't even know anywhere else really where you can learn Estonian so easily or well. I think it's an Estonian based operation, so it makes sense that they have Estonian, and why not? And I'd definitely encourage them to add their neighboring languages of Latvian and Lithuanian, because I would love to see Latvian and Lithuanian on there as full languages that you can learn. They do have a Latvian interface, but I don't think they actually offer Latvian as a language yet. That would be pretty cool to see. But I guess as well, I mean, market to markets and business is business, so they may be looking at other languages like your Chinese, Japanese, those kinds of languages that they realize that people may be more interested or in learning, just because, yeah, more lucrative, right? But I like what they've done, and I think that it's worth a look if you're interested in any of the languages that I mentioned. So you Finnish, Estonian, Russian, German, French, Spanish, Italian, I think, maybe as well. But they're pretty good, and I say check them out and see what you think. And I'd love to hear your thoughts if you try them out. I did give, that was the last application actually that I gave to the person I'm mentoring at the moment, and they were really, really happy with the app. So actually they said it was their favorite, which is really, really cool. And as I say, I mean, I can't really say much more than that. I've been working with this person for a couple of months, and they just had this amazing experience with Speakly, and they're really getting into it. And what I found interesting is they did the test in the beginning, and sort of so we're able to skip the basic stuff and go straight into more complex sentences. And the vocabulary is repeated as well, so it really reinforces it. It's cool. And I think that's about as far as I want to talk on apps. I'm not a huge app person generally. As I said in the beginning, I'm very much into my books. I like my courses. I particularly like my study groups, and I like my classes. I like the social interaction of learning a language with other people. That for me is a really important part, not just because of the learning itself, but because of the motivation. You end up being motivated to meet up with the people who are learning with you and who are on the journey with you. And that, I think, is probably an equally value, if not more valuable, thing in the whole process of language learning. This is kind of how I find generally language learning. And if it comes to apps, or it comes to learning with a teacher or whatever else, I think if you can find people to study with, then it's a really good thing to do. There are language challenges that we have. For me, the jury's out a little bit on the language challenges, simply because a number of them do, they sort of, you keep yourself sort of up with other people, right? You do these sort of on month 1, week 2, or whatever you do, but you may not all in the same group be studying the same language. And so a study group per se, to help each other actually go through materials and do something constructive, isn't necessarily what people are doing in these groups. What I think is more useful is when you have a group of people learning the same language, whether they're at exactly the same level, it doesn't really matter so much. What matters is that you recognize that you're not, like, sort of say, I don't know, C1 level or something like that, and an A1 level. That's not going to work as well, because there's going to be a lot more of this mentoring down than the person at C2, C1 level learning much new stuff. But it can work, for example, even with a level like an A2, B1 and an A1 or a beginner, because it's always handy to review what you've done at A1 and A2 at the B1, B2 levels, because it helps to sort of reinforce the basics of the language. So in my Korean study group, for example, there are people who've been studying Korean for a few years, and then there's someone like me, and I've maybe done 3 proper full months of Korean, when I had the month off where things were tough and I couldn't really commit to it. But what I found really cool about that is we go through, we've chosen books that we go through, we read the text together, we read through the vocabulary list together, we correct each other on grammar or pronunciation. This is on Clubhouse, but this can be done anywhere. And then we actually just we practice the language. I mean, we're using the language, right? And we're talking about the language, and we're just by sheerly just talking about it and talking about how we remember certain words, or isn't that related to this word? We'll ask each other questions, and because we've seen different things, there's a conversation that arises from it, but it's based all around the language and the learning process. And it's not just a general, yay, aren't we amazing? Which can be good, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we need a more practical, we get together, we do it, we understand that we have difficult times, we understand that things are not always easy, but we get together and we learn and we do something positive and we do something concrete. And that in language learning is really, really key, because if you just get together and sort of go, yay, it feels nice for a few minutes, but then you realize what you haven't done yourself, right? You go home and okay, I haven't really actually touched the book, and you've just spent maybe a couple of hours just like chatting in not the target language, and not really going anywhere further forward with the language you want to learn, or getting any help from it, right? All you're doing is basically just clapping each other and saying how amazing you all are, and you are amazing, but you don't need to be told that constantly necessarily. You can definitely have a day off the clapping and a bit more on the sort of studying your books. I think that's often a more useful sort of exploration of your time. But also the thing that I find is it deepens the friendships within that group. It deepens the relationships, because you go through and you build these memories from these study groups. And this is where it gets really exciting, because you form these friendships, you want to go back to the group, not just for the language, but for the people, and you know them and they know you, and they know where you're at and you know where they're at, and you can say to them, this week I've not done anything, I'm completely unprepared, but let's just give it a go. And it kickstarts you back into it. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. And I think if you use apps, whichever you use, whether it's the 3 that I mentioned just now, whether it's Duolingo, whether it's Memrise, whether it's Babbel, whether it's anything and everything in between, then you may well get some real benefit from that too, as an extra thing to do. And I mean, I know people like Memrise have added in some cool video stuff that they use for their courses, which is pretty cool, and you can watch it on the go. Also, interspersed with sort of YouTube videos and Instagram follows for people who are teaching you a language, the language you want to learn, or are from the country and speak the language and produce materials in the language. Whatever it is you want to do, you can do that. I also still very much heartily recommend TikTok. Start following the people who make language content. It takes a few weeks, so bear with me. It takes a few weeks to get TikTok to understand that what you want is not people dancing and doing silly things. You want language stuff and you want something interesting. My TikTok now is jam-packed with things that I find interesting. I just follow people that I like, pretty much all language related, but I also follow a few other things in between. Like I follow a few cookery things where people make some nice stuff to eat, and I think, oh, I'll get some inspiration from that. Or people follow, I follow a few other people for sort of history or things, you know, that I think are just particularly interesting. I like science, so I like to follow sciencey stuff as well, where people explain things so that, you know, my poor brain can understand something a lot more easily. And these are the kinds of things that I think TikTok is really, really useful for. And I think TikTok is changing and it's going over that way. It's still not 100% there yet, because if you sign up as a new account, you're just confronted with crazy songs. Some of them are very funny, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not gonna poo-poo these people, because I think some of them are very entertaining, and but you can get lost on TikTok in all of the crazy, and it takes a good 3 weeks to sort of sort out your feed so that you get given things that you actually want to that help your learning and help you move forward. If any of you are interested, I could put together a list of TikTok people to follow so that you can just go in and find them, and then we can start following the language community and start interacting with them on TikTok as well. But there are some really, really cool ones. So if you've not tried TikTok, or you think that, you know, TikTok is just a load of crazy and I'll lose lots of time throughout the week, you have to be very strict on yourself and sort of say, no, I'm going to use it, I'm going to use this force for good and not the force for evil. You know, don't join the dark side like in Star Wars. Make sure you you go on, you go on the right side of the of the TikTok world and learn things from it. But there are some really, really cool things, and I'm sure you're all seeing in your feeds TikTok videos all over the place, whether they're funnies or whether they're things that people are sharing with great information. I think that there's something really good there, and I'd like to see more of it. Now, okay, I think I've sort of reached the end of what I want to say. I mean, you know about Clubhouse, as I've talked about Clubhouse before. Clubhouse is absolutely amazing as well for language learning. If you have an iPhone, I strongly encourage you to join Clubhouse. If you can find somebody who's already in Clubhouse, they will be able to send you an invitation if they have some spare. And it should really be people you know, or know of you pretty well to do that, because they have to basically stake their reputation on you going on Clubhouse. So you can do that. Soon it should come out of this beta phase, and it should open up to Android phones, and it should open up to more and more people, and you'll be able to just sign up. This is kind of what happened with a number of other social media sites. We often forget that this is how it started, but a lot of sites do this. Clubhouse is just one that's done it, and they're building the community, they're making it solid, and then it will keep opening and opening and opening until it's just an open, normal social media outlet for everyone. But I find it really, really good. It's a good tool, a solid tool, very useful for learning and practicing your languages particularly. I opened a Polyglot Conference Club on there, and I do regular talks. A few of my friends on a number of these in the language community on a number of these channels also have their own clubs and also do regular talks on Clubhouse. And all I can say is it's really cool. I tend to advertise them through Twitter, so if you follow me on Twitter, then you can see when I'm doing them more easily. And feel free to reach out if I know you and you know, and trust you. Feel free to reach out. I have a couple of invitations left, and if you know and trust me, then you're welcome to reach out. There are limited numbers, obviously, that I have. I don't get like thousands of invitations. It's like, yeah, they normally give like 3 at a time or something. But I'm very happy to invite people. I know, yeah. So that is kind of it where I wanted to get to with my talk about language learning with applications, and I hope you all found that useful. Now I'm going to do the job of sort of going back and trying to get into the questions that some of you may have had. Hello to everyone, by the way, who's joined, and I've been doing my best to kind of keep up with the waves on Instagram, but it's not always easy to sort of interrupt myself and say hello every time. I know it's the cool and popular thing to do, to just keep saying hello, and I've tried that the first few months, but I do find when I do that, I sort of lose momentum, and I think the videos turn out actually quite boring for anyone watching them, just me saying hello to 100 million people. Of course, I really appreciate you all coming in, and I really appreciate you all here, so thank you for coming. And now I'm going to try and go back and look at the questions, and okay, let me see. I hope you realize that you're a huge inspiration for, oh wow, for me and others. Thank you, Alex, that's very kind. And oh, that's very kind of you, Alex. Thank you. Hola, Richard. Un saludo en español. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Todo bien? Jason, when I first started to use LingQ, I didn't get it, but now I use it every day. It's good to see you saying that, Jason, actually, because I think it is a common thing. And you know, and Steve does his best to put out a lot of videos. He puts a lot of videos out, Steve, to sort of try and talk about LingQ and educate people and stuff. And I think more and more of that probably needs to happen for it to become really common knowledge. What's my opinion on starting languages through the ones you've already learned? For example, learning Russian through a French Assimil course. Absolutely. So Alex, I would definitely do that. I recommend that if you've got materials in a language you already speak, and the language isn't a barrier, it's actually a tool to learn another language, why not? I've done it. We often talk about this being called laddering. So you ladder from one language to another language you speak to another, so laddering. But I have a lot of books that I've used in various languages, and so I don't really worry about the language it's in. I worry more about the course and do I like the look of it and does it work for me, rather than the actual language it's written in. I'm glad you've enjoyed the this topic. Thank you for the comments about that, by the way. Oh, Brian. Okay, I've got to read this because it's quite funny. Duolingo Bird says, I have your family, learn 3 words of Spanish or they die. Fortunately, Duo has not sent me a comment like that yet. That would be quite scary. Oh, my word. I like the humor. Inga says, what I love about Speakly is that they also have grammar explanations. Yes, they do. And conjugation tables. Yes, they do. I like how the sentences are built and why. Yeah, it really is useful in Knives. I find it really good like that. And of course, the sentences are useful and not only goals on a Ferris wheel as such. Yeah, they are exactly. It's not set out in the same way. It's how many words you've seen. So what they do is they show you this thing of how many words. It's like kind of you've done this many words, you've seen this many words, and you've learned this many words. It's quite a nice way of doing it, because then I always find that really funny actually with Chinese, because when people talk about how many characters they know, and I was like, I haven't got a clue how many characters I know, but it's a bit like that. You use Busu, okay, and it works well for you. I'm glad it does. I didn't gel with Busu so much, but I'm glad it works for you. They may have changed it since I looked at it. When I first went on it, it was years and years ago, and I didn't find it so wonderful for me. But I'm glad that it's working for you. And this is the key. There's no correct answer for language learning. People come to me and say, "How do you learn languages?" Well, what I can do is give you advice that you can then adapt and see what works for you. And as I say, the person I've been working with the last couple of months, we've been through this process twice a week on a call, just talking through the learning process, and it's worked well. You know, I'm seeing great improvements, which is always very nice, and I'm seeing increased motivation and understanding of how to actually learn a language. My philosophy is this: look, I could possibly teach you a language, possibly, yeah, I could possibly, if I were to spend every single day with you and talk to you in the language and just until your brain exploded. But honestly, what I prefer to do is to give you the knowledge of how to learn a language, so that you have that ability to just change it and adapt it to whatever you need to do. And because I think that language learning is a very personal journey. It's not something that's sort of and even for each language it changes, right? It's slightly different for each language. So I think that there is certainly a set of things, a set of truths to language learning, that you need to do this and that and the other, like doing it regularly, actually having contact with the language. I mean, sitting there and crossing your fingers or and hoping that you will learn the language, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. But so no language, this doesn't work in any language, okay? You have to have contact. But there are certain other things that change, depends on the language. Okay. Jaké jsou auto nahrávky na speakly? Je to syntetický hlas nebo živé lidé, které tam mluví? Jsem ten Židová, děkuji za odpověď. Olga, ty jsou lidi, takže to není jako systematický hlas, to je něco normálního, že? Takže není ten problém pro tě. Ale to je, a speak, máš, jak je to napísáno, tečka, to je speak, jako speak v angličtině, a takže speakly, to není speak, S-P-E-A-K-L-Y, speakly. Ale to je výborně, takže uvidíš, které jazyky jsi si učil nebo se učí se speakly. Tečka to je jenom estonštinu, takže to je jenom ten jazyk tečka, protože mluvím druhý jazyky na speakly, takže to není pro mě jako pomoc. Finštinu studoval jsem trochu, ale jenom pár slov, to není jako vůbec jako moc důležité pro mě teďka naučit se ještě jednou finsky. Ale to bude, doufám, že budu mít asi čas, že by studoval ještě jednou finštinu. Moc se mi líbí. Takže dobře. All right, let me see. Nice to speak Czech again. I've not spoken it for ages. Okay, treatments. Okay, lovely seeing these nice conversations. I love it. Okay, you can't. Okay. You've never used TikTok before, and you can't ask your son for help. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't want me there. Inga, do you know what? My daughter, the reason I got into TikTok was because my daughter wanted to use TikTok, and I said, well, I don't know what it is yet, and I need to find out how it works and what it is for the age and whether it's appropriate for her to be on, and so I said, look, we'll spend a few weeks together looking at TikTok together, and we spent an hour or so each day looking at TikTok together, and that's how I learned about it. And now I like it. It's become very uncool for her. So that's probably the best way to get your child off TikTok, is to be the terrible parent. I've not made any videos on it. I've made one video. I lie. I made one video, but not where I actually speak into the camera. But I've not really used it very much. I'm not kind of at the point at the moment where I'd want to use it actively myself. I may change that one day. I don't know. It depends how TikTok develops. At the moment, I'm happy where I am on the social media channels I'm already on, but I do interact with people on it, and I enjoy it very much. Poslední otázka. Znáš nějaké jazykové skupiny na Clubhouse? Děkuju. Který jazyk chceš, Olga? Nevím. No, máme hodně moc. Jestli chceš, můžeme napsat na Messenger, jestli chceš, a to můžu asi říct, jak to dělám teďka na Clubhouse, takže uvidíš, jak to jde, no. Není to problém pro mě. Okay, Sally, Anki is an app that works. Yeah, Anki does work. Anki and things like that. For I didn't really talk much about sort of space repetition things, and that's kind of why Memorize didn't appear so much in this or either, because that's kind of how it started. And then they've got the courses as well. But yeah, I was talking more about apps to actually study the language from scratch, I guess, or to learn the language, or to supplement the learning with sort of something that wasn't just space repetition. But of course, yeah, people do use space repetition technology like Anki and so on to sort of go through vocabulary, and that does work for a lot of people. I personally don't use them very often. I often input things and then don't go back to them. That's my guilty sin. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't use them so much, but I have tried using them. What I always find with some of these is the words are so out of context for me that they're almost like something I studied but then didn't really integrate into my proper knowledge of the language. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't for me. But yes, they've definitely got their place in the learning scheme of things. Yeah, I like these examples here that you're giving. Thank you for all your comments. Okay, I found Duolingo a good catalyst for vocabulary and a bit of grammar. But afterwards, I found that it was way more helpful reading books, listening to music, talking to people. Do you know what, actually, Nimrod, just to kind of be fair and balance this a little bit and be fair to Duolingo, because I'm not kind of, as I say, I'm not here to sort of poo-poo any of these efforts, because I really believe that what they've done for some languages is actually really good, and language learning generally is really good because they've popularized it, right? What I would say is I have met people who have studied through Duolingo and they actually came out the other side speaking a language to a fairly okay degree. I mean, they could converse and move forward from it. So it isn't just that they learn about owls. And I mean, I joke a little bit. I do joke a little bit and say it's like purple cows and all sorts of nonsense, but it's not necessarily. And I you know, Esperanto, for example, has benefited a lot from this. People have used it with great success. People have used Welsh to great success. I've actually met people who have been through the Welsh Duolingo and they've used it to great success. So I'm not going to poo-poo it completely. Absolutely not. But for me personally, it's not my thing. But I would definitely not poo-poo the app entirely. Absolutely not. So yes, it can be very useful. Any prescriptions for the HSK test level 4? Sally, I'm guessing that if you're using Anki, I think that's probably going to be a good thing to do that for testing yourself on recognizing the characters. I imagine that is actually a really good way to learn the characters, or to at least learn the meanings of them on using that kind of technology, because the space repetition, you have to keep coming over it again and again and again and again until you know it, right? So I imagine that is actually what that does really well with that kind of learning. Carlos, nice to see you. Hi, Richard. Thanks for the discussion. For my position, I will be doing research in Israel on the usefulness of language apps for the purpose of revitalizing Ladino. So this is very helpful. You're very welcome, Carlos. I think that it would be cool to see more stuff in Ladino, and I think actually Ladino is a lucky language in a number of ways, because it's extremely accessible for anybody who's learnt and studied other languages that are sort of similar, particularly Spanish or Portuguese or something where you can access the language quite quickly. And I think that will be a benefit to a language like Ladino. Some languages struggle a little bit more, I think, when they're particularly different or not isolates, but very not easily understandable from other languages. They sort of suffer more with these kinds of things. But I think Ladino could see a great revival on language apps potentially, because people would be intrigued. What is it? How do you learn it? Can we start using it? Groups would start forming and things like that. And I think that would be very, very cool. Okay. Inga, that's hilarious. You respect grew for me because of my my daughter, that's hilarious. Yeah. As you say, the learning methods have to be adapted for different languages. Absolutely, yeah, I love it. Skupiny pro polygloty. Takže máme, ale no, to je, no, třeba ještě lepší, no, přes e-mail. Myslím, že no, budou vidět, jak to můžeme jako vidět. Můžeme mluvit, takže další jazyky i v Clubhouse, ale myslím, že pro mě, jestli mám skupinu v Clubhouse, mám tendenci mluvit jenom jeden jazyk, že jo? Protože nemám jako hodně moc skupin, kteří umějí všichni lidé takže dobře mluvit moc jazyků, že jo. Takže to je ten problém, že jo. To je ten problém, ale hele, uvidíme, jak to můžeme uradit, zaorganizovat něco. Lingo Deer is actually a pretty good app, but don't get put off by the children's appearance. Okay, I've not used Lingo Deer actually. People have mentioned this before. I haven't used it. I should go and have a look. It has a lot of great content, and I've used it for Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, and Japanese. Wow, maybe I should look at it for some Korean. Absolutely. Oh, Sally, you're looking for the traditional characters. I'm not sure. You could put them in yourself. I mean, you could make your own. Actually, making your own cards is often quite a good learning thing anyway, I think. So I would definitely try that. I'm just going to see if I can try and answer any more questions that I have here. Cześć, Wojtek, cześć. Jak się mamy? Yasu. Kalimera, kalispera, Yaimena, kalispera. Thank you very much. Quel conseil tu que, comme méthode, parler les premiers jours comme Benny, Louis? Ça dépend en fait de la langue. Si on parle par exemple, c'est possible, oui, bien sûr, on peut pratiquer la langue, mais c'est clair, on ne peut pas parler sans grammaire, sans mots, quoi. C'est impossible, mais on peut pratiquer ce qu'on a appris. Et je crois que ça, c'est l'idée de Benny Lewis, en fait. C'est pas qu'on dit, oui, on parle une langue dès le premier jour. C'est pas, on parle parce si on n'a pas les connaissances de la langue, c'est impossible de parler. Mais bien sûr, en apprenant, par exemple, pour moi, j'essaie de pratiquer toutes mes langues chaque jour. Donc, si je suis en train d'apprendre une langue, par exemple, maintenant le cornouaillais que j'apprends, je fais des cours, j'ai trouvé maintenant des groupes de conversation et j'essaie de formuler aussi des phrases dans ma tête ou bien des mots que j'aimerais bien dire ou bien parler comme thème avec les gens qui parlent la langue. Et donc, moi, je fais ça de toute façon, quoi. Il y a des langues quand même, comme le cornouaillais, que j'arriverai jamais à parler ici. À Skopje, c'est impossible, je veux dire. Il y a personne. Mais c'est la même chose avec le coréen. En fait, j'essaie de faire la même chose un peu aussi avec le coréen. Ce qu'il faut faire, par exemple, avec les cours que je suis en train de faire en ce moment, on a des trucs à faire, des devoirs quoi, à faire. Donc, il faut que j'écrive, il faut que je parle, il faut que je pense un peu dans la langue et pour pouvoir utiliser mes connaissances de la langue. Et oui, ça m'aide beaucoup. Donc, je suis d'accord avec ça. Je crois qu'avec des connaissances actives d'une langue, c'est sans faire quelque chose. Comment on va faire? Comment on va arriver vraiment à parler une langue? On peut arriver à lire un livre, je ne sais pas, écrire quelque chose peut-être, mais ou bien comprendre la télé, comprendre quelque chose d'autre. Mais parler activement, il faut pratiquer. C'est ça, il faut faire beaucoup de fautes. Et c'est normal, je fais de gaffe tout le temps, quoi. Je fais plein d'erreurs, quoi. Enfin, en plusieurs langues. Et c'est normal. Je fais même en anglais des fois. C'est normal. Okay, let me see if I can find any more questions here. I'm doing my best. I love that you're all talking to each other as well. But is it in Macedonian? Can you say it to a friend? Multiple. Okay. Oh wow. Okay. I think I'm in the middle of a conversation here on Instagram. I can't find. I thought it was a question about Macedonian, but I didn't see a question. I think it might be for somebody else. If there are any other questions, please feel free to come back to me and ask me. At the moment, I can see questions for people. I love that you're all talking to each other. That's fantastic. Yeah. I hope that you found all of these kinds of sort of the welcome to the world, my world. You know, it's kind of how my life is. I just constantly go around and round on all these different things, looking at them and enjoying seeing the languages in different contexts. And I think one thing I would say is like for my phone, for example, I've not been at my computer as much recently, and I've been more on my phone, and so it's made some tasks between difficult and impossible to do. But what it has done is also made me look at some of the apps, and it's made me go back to what I can do, and adjusting your routine and adjusting what you do to your phone or to your tablet or whatever it is you use. It's good to be in a position where you can still actively do something with the language, and it's not a case that, oh, I don't have access to my computer, or I don't have access to my books, or I don't have access to my phone or whatever. You can switch them all out and still carry on with some sort of learning, and I think that's the really important thing. Okay. Are you serious? If I could make my own, I would totally alter the course of Chinese etymology. I love that, Sally. That's hilarious. I don't think I'm good enough. I love that you've written that. But yeah, why not, Sally? I mean, seriously, I'm not talking about you sort of making up your own Chinese signs. I'm talking more about you taking a book and adding looking at what the pinyin is and finding matching the same characters. I mean, that would be possible, surely. I mean, and it's a good test as well for you to see if you can find them, and then you can test them by putting them into Google to make sure that the pinyin comes out the same, and make sure that the translation comes out the same, or at least similar, or at least one of the ones that appears, because sometimes these characters have a number of translations. But that's kind of what I was talking about. Maybe I've missed the point, but that's kind of what I was talking about. But I find that quite a useful thing to do. When I'm adding things into, I particularly have added things into LingQ, and writing out Greek texts, writing out Korean texts, for example, into LingQ, and just writing them instead of copying them. But yeah, I found that pretty cool. Oh, someone says here, Lingo Dear has traditional characters. There we go. There's one potential solution, but there should be more. And I think it's good that you're learning the traditional. All of my friends that speak about learning Chinese, they always say that it's good to learn the traditional characters. I think probably because you can see better where things have come from. Watched a lot of videos from Lao Shu lately. He will be missed. In fact, indeed he will. You know, still can't really believe what happened. It's kind of still very strange and sad, and yeah, he will be very missed for a lot of us. And I don't think every now and again I see videos as well of his that come up on my YouTube channel, and it's just it's heartbreaking to see it. Just not. I've got no more words. I mean, I can't. Yeah, it's horrible. At least we do have those videos left that continue to motivate people, and I hope that people will get some comfort from seeing what he achieved and what he did. And I hope that his kids will be able to see how many people's lives he touched all around the world. And that's the only thing I can say. There are no other words, unfortunately. There's nothing I can say that can obviously make anything really better in any proper tangible way. I'm a glass half full type person. I tend to look for positives where I can, the silver linings and stuff, and so, but it's not always the most helpful thing as well. And I recognize that just sometimes it's just a little bit rubbish, really. That what can happen. But yeah, my heart still goes out to everyone who sort of his friends and family and everyone who knew Moses. Incredible person. I used it to, so Inga says, I used it to play and relax. It's a nice way to waste time without feeling it's completely wasted. I like that you said that, Inga. Okay. So what you're doing now is analyzing. Oh, you're analyzing the 214 radicals. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I did miss that. I didn't get you that. I thought you were just preparing for the exam, and so you needed to have the characters. Radical analysis. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank as to what else I can suggest at the moment, but I'll see if I can talk to someone who's better informed about this kind of study. Somebody I would say to look out for is Vladimir Skultety. He's very good with Chinese, and another person would be Michael Campbell. And again, they both got very into Chinese to the point of writing books. They're both also Michael Campbell works at, his company is Glossika, and they have as well language learning materials. But he does lots of things on the side with very many things, including lots of Chinese character understanding and teaching as well. So he might be a good person to reach out to. Vladimir Skultety is also great, and he is somebody I will see or tend to see quite often on Clubhouse and get to talk to him. So I will try and keep this in my head and ask him a question, and then I'll come back on another live and I'll mention it. So yeah, you feel free to reach out as well, Sally. I mean, if I can join you up in some way or ask, feel free to reach out, and I'll see if I can do something. It's a bit difficult when you're on a live and you just see your name and this, and it all gets lost after the live. But do sort of reach out, whether it's on a message. I think probably messaging me is probably going to be easier on Instagram, Twitter, or on Facebook. I've got my Facebook page as well. Okay. Okay. So anyway, I think we've got fairly close to the end now. We've got coming up to the hour, and I'm aware that Instagram doesn't like me going over an hour, so I tend to get cut off. But if to push the English for Polska. yeah. I sometimes when I try and speak Czech and Polish, sometimes now it kind of goes a little bit crazy with the sort of the two languages being from a similar group. But yeah, it's it's a normal thing, right? Whenever you learn languages from the same part of the same group, it can get a bit confusing sometimes. So yes, every now and again, a little bit of Polish does slip into my Czech and vice versa. And what can you do? I've not lived in Czech Republic for a long time, so I kind of take the rough with the smooth. I tend to hear more Polish. I don't hear so much of it, but I hear more Polish, I guess, than Czech. Czech I very rarely hear nowadays. I read it a fair amount sometimes on on pages, but I don't tend to speak it actively very often. And so I think your accent. You think I sound like a native speaker in any of the language that I speak? Oh, that's very kind of you to say. I'm not sure I completely agree. I think that sometimes I can have moments of a native sounding or sort of a first language speaker accent. But I think that very quickly people can detect that I'm not a monolingual speaker of the other languages very often. I think that it's, yeah, I mean, to some degree in some of the languages, of course, it can go on a bit longer than just a couple of sentences, but absolutely, you know, I don't hide my heritage or my original language. I kind of own up to it. And it's pretty obvious for a lot of people as well that, you know, when not just when I speak, but if they see me or something, they have an idea. Yeah, thank you, Sally. Feel free, and I'll do what I can. I try and stay as sort of, I try and be as helpful as I possibly can. And yeah. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Todo bien? Bien, gracias. Pues nos vemos la semana que viene. Nos vemos otra vez, de nuevo. Vamos a tratar de otros asuntos, de otros temas, y vamos a hablar juntos. Nos vemos, chicos. Hasta luego.